Welcome to a weekly Manga Podcast special event. This is normally the podcast where we talk about all of your favorite ongoing Japanese manga, but this episode is instead going to be part one of our exploration and deep dive into the series GACHIAKUTA by Kei Urana. My name is Bruce. I am the proprietor of the White Gray Black YouTube channel, and I am, of course, joined by my constant co-host, Gautam.
Hello, hello.
We are manga connoisseurs, manga critics, manga fans, manga enthusiasts, and we thank you so much for coming with us on this journey. For this episode, we're going to cover a little bit about the author of GACHIAKUTA, Kei Urana, her history, rise to fame, and then we are going to do a deep dive into chapter 1 of the series, and then deep dive a little bit more broadly into the first volume, which is the first 4 chapters of this series. After this, each subsequent episode will cover 2 volumes each, will be released weekly, hopefully, so please do feel free to read along with us, leave us your comments, jump into the discussion, and let us know your thoughts. Let's start out with a little bit about the author and her history, pretty briefly, and then we'll get into the chapters. So, GACHIAKUTA is a series written by mangaka Kei Urana, or Urana Kei if you want it in the Japanese order, published in Weekly Shonen Magazine. You can read it, I'll give a plug, you can read it on the Kei Manga app if you so choose. Quick history on her is that she is listed, she sort of is, the first call it is listed as a massive fan of Soul Eater, and her big claim to fame sort of before serialization was being an assistant to Soul Eater author Atsushi Okubo on his series Fire Force. During that time, she published a one-shot called Shikido in December of 2019, which won first prize in the 103rd Newcomer Manga Award conducted by Shonen Magazine. GACHIAKUTA first began serialization in February of 2022, the same month that Fire Force published its last chapter, so I think it's pretty clear that she saw that one through the end, hopped on to her own thing, and has been published weekly since then in Weekly Shonen Magazine. So Kei Urana essentially got to succeed her sensei Atsushi Okubo in the same magazine, and Okubo even came out and said in this tweet, which is translated by Twitter, which is not the best translation, he basically said, hey, new serialization by Kei Urana, they are a big fan of Soul Eater, and Okubo calls Kei his rightful successor, if the translation here is to be believed, and I think a lot of people have reported and said that that translation is essentially right. So it's kind of a dream come true, I would imagine, for Kei Urana to grow up loving something like Soul Eater, get to work with Atsushi Okubo on Fire Force, and then as soon as Fire Force ends, in literally the same month, start serializing her own series, and then have that, your sort of mentor and sensei and guide along the way, say, hey, this is my spiritual successor, here it is. And I do think that everything we see in GACHIAKUTA speaks to that. I don't think there is any other series quite like it, but the closest things you could say are definitely Soul Eater and Fire Force. So,
yeah, I sense a similar vibe. The art, you know what? Now that you mention it, like the characters look similar, but not. It's like the art is distinct enough to make them feel like they're at a completely different manga. But yeah, I think vibes wise, you're on point there. They are kind of similar feeling.
Yeah, they're definitely not exactly the same. I don't think it's a copycat thing, but it's a spiritual successor.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, more so unique worlds and strong character writing.
Unique worlds, strong characters, interesting visuals, different visuals. So that's just a little bit of history of Kei Urana, the author. Quick thoughts on the first volume, Gautam, before we get into sort of going through the chapter and doing a deep dive. For historical context, I have a little bit of history reading GACHIAKUTA. I read this when it was first published, and I read somewhere around 40 or 50 chapters before I fell off it. So I'm a little bit more familiar with the world and what happens for the first probably 5 volumes. Gautam, have you ever read this, and how did you feel about volume 1?
Yeah, so I remember reading chapter 1, and I think I read like 2 or something. But yeah, I think I only read like 1 or 2 chapters of this. I like it so far. I think the art is I don't even know how to describe it. It's really good, but it's unique. I like the is it heavy lines? Would that be the right way to say it?
I would say heavy ink was
Heavy ink.
definitely a style. Yeah, heavy lines, heavy ink, for sure.
Yeah, I really dug that. And there was like just a lot to like in this. I think the first chapter had the most meat on the bones discussion wise. But I liked all the chapters. I think 2, 3, and 4 were more action heavy, and the action was freaking badass. I thought everything about it was all pretty cool so far.
Yeah. This is a really cool series.
Yeah, and I think like what we like about Okubo is, at least for me, is I think Soul Eater had freaking amazing character writing. I loved the characters.
Yeah. Fire Force is similar. It's very strong characters built there.
I thought the Soul Eater plot was kind of like convoluted nonsense, but it didn't really matter because I loved it's like one of these weird middle grounds where I love the characters so much that I was just having a great ride along the way. But GACHIAKUTA is different in that I'm already kind of bought into the world. It's interesting, it's fascinating, and I like kind of the narrative beats so far. I don't know enough about the characters yet, but I've only read the first volume. But they seem strong so far.
Yeah. You really only end up learning kind of enough, I would say, about Rudo, but I think there's a lot of things to like about him. Let's get into chapter 1. We'll spend sort of the majority of our time here because I think, like you said, there's a lot of meat on this bone. There's a lot to talk about. This is the introduction of a world and our main character and sort of minor introduction to magic system and stuff like that. So we are greeted with this first page, which kind of gives you an idea of the angle of world building that we're going for here.
Could you share?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the exact translation, but I do know that GACHIAKUTA has some kind of base that means trash. I think it's gachi, or gachia or something is trash, and GACHIAKUTA is something like that. Let me okay, look it up. What does the title GACHIAKUTA mean? Here we go. Serious trash or legit garbage. Gachi means something along the lines of serious or legit, and akuta means something like trash, garbage, refuse. So, yeah, basically it's like absolute garbage. A phrase which you might hear often referenced in anime and manga. So this intro page here, we get this voiceover that says, "They say that when an object is well loved, it is eventually imbued with a soul," and we ask, what about garbage and trash that gets thrown out? What is that imbued with? And that will be answered in, I think, chapter 4. We talk about that.
We get that answer in chapter 2.
Yeah, kind of. A little bit in chapter 2, and it's kind of lore dumped on us in chapter 4, like exactly what it is. But yeah. So you get the idea that this is going to be sort of about what's the idea with things being thrown out. And this is the second page here that says humans turn a thing into garbage and they treat it like as soon as something is thrown out, it is immediately, treated like it's dirty. Even something that was loved. They never see value in it again. They even do it to other humans, which that's kind of the key. I think the key kind of phrase in this whole intro thing is like, here's the way humans treat garbage. They throw it out. The second it touches the trash bin, its value immensely decreases. And that's true for humans too. And so what does that mean?
And, this is like, I hate to stop us. I think I'll be stopping us a lot in the first chapter more than any other chapter because there's just a lot to say here about the story's themes. Mm-hmm. To me, it's clearly like a statement on class disparity and social disparity. Mm-hmm. We treat each other like lesser, or we like to, for our own sanity, we see each other as like the poor as less valuable and less worth the love because they're not a productive member of society or for whatever other reason. Yeah. And they're saying that if we view other human beings that way, then surely it's going to lead to other societal issues and problems as well.
Yeah, or even as we'll see in a little bit here, talking about Rudo, I mean, the main character, he's sort of scarred and kind of crippled essentially by what happens in his past. And so he's essentially already considered a garbage human. We see the way that, his bullies and stuff treat him. But we'll get there. Let's look at some cool stuff here. Just as a quick aside, I think the visual design of these guards is just like immediately cool. It's just like a good, like, it's just like, they just like look cool. We see them sort of at a waste collection facility, and then we meet our main character, Rudo, as he's sort of digging through the trash. He has, I think, a cool design right off the bat, kind of with this hooded thing and these gloves, which we get a lot of close-up shots of, which will be very important. They chase him down.
I wonder what those like sickles on their, like, because Rudo has it too on his hoodie.
Yeah, the sort of like moons, the kind of crescent moon shaped things.
Yeah, I wonder if that's something functional or if it's just part of their aesthetic.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I'm not sure that we'll get to, because I don't know if we'll ever come back to this place. I assume we will. I think that's part of the main quest. But yeah, really cool. But we do see Rudo being pretty capable here at outrunning these guards. We see him here like doing Matrix bullet time, dodging some bullets. Pretty sort of crafty and sneaky, getting around, throwing trash at them. So he's clearly sort of a competent main character. He isn't. He knows stuff. He's done this before. He knows how to deal with these guys. He knows how to run. And he's kind of infamous. I think we're told that he has like a nickname. They call him like the trash. I don't remember what it is exactly, like the trash stealer or something like that. But
yeah.
And then we get sort of.
I gotta wonder why they're so protective over the trash, though. I mean, like this society. This place is called Heaven, right? We learn later, but in Heaven, I wonder why trash is so guarded by people who clearly don't care about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it all kind of ties into stuff I think that happens after Chapter 1, potentially. Like, it might have something to do with, like, if a bunch of trash together can turn into, generate like anima and turn into a monster. Maybe there's a power you can extract from it. Maybe they're using that power and then discarding it or something. Or I don't know. I think there is a lot of... the cool thing about GACHIAKUTA, we were talking about this right before we started recording, but one of the cool things is this first chapter builds up a really cool and interesting world with lots of interesting questions. And then, as you'll see when we get to the end, completely throws our main character out of that world and starts building a second one. It's kind of like, hey, did you like that world building I did? You want to see me do it again? Which I think is a really cool flex by Urana here. But here's Rudo. This is our main character. Great design, in my opinion.
Great design.
Super good design.
I love his eyes.
Yeah, his eyes are really cool. He has a sort of very clear silhouette with his ruffled hair. And this guy does not look like your generic shonen protagonist, which immediately makes me like him more than half of the new stuff we get in other magazines. So
yeah, I appreciate how like kind of rough and edgy he looks, paralleled with the little bunny in his backpack to show his tender side. I don't know. It's really good. It's a good first shot of him.
Yeah, and edgy is a good way to kind of describe him because he's kind of, as we see in the rest of Chapter 1, he's very rough around the edges in some very fun and funny ways, I think.
Yeah.
But in this chapter, we get, like you said, class disparity. We get it kind of laid out for us pretty plain here. The lower class people are called tribesfolk or tribesmen, and they again, very kind of typical like. There is a dividing line. The tribesfolk live in trash, shanties reminiscent of you see things in Africa or South America, like slums built from trash, from thrown away scrap and things like that. That's essentially what Rudo and his tribesfolk people live in. And then on the other side of town, there's real buildings that are real. So,
and I'm curious, right? Like. The first shot we see of the tribesman, which his name is Remno, we learn later, but is he's wearing kind of like Native American inspired clothing, I'm wondering if it's a statement on colonization because like the guardsmen all have like British looking uniforms, right? So yeah, I'm curious if that's the statement the author was going for.
I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of flavor here that's hard to find intention in, I think, before we read a little bit more. But I do think it's interesting to think about if and when Rudo gets back here, you know, what is... Like, does any of the... Theme,
I think it's more than just flavor. I think it seems just based on kind of what they're wearing. It seems like an intentional design, but it's hard to tell. I'm not sure how much the author knows about kind of like different cultures and whatnot. So it's hard to... Yeah.
It's definitely... I mean, I definitely think it's intentional. I guess it's hard to know where... If that is a story that ends up somewhere or is drawn fully to a conclusion, or if it's just kind of flavor.
I think it's just a real-world parallel.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. So we see Rudo kind of back in the slums here. He gets kind of bullied and beaten up by other kids. We get a little bit more information about him. We learned that he is the son of a ruthless killer. They locked him up. Trying to get rid of a negative image, blah, blah, blah. Very sort of like, I don't want to say standard slum shit is what's going on here, is kind of. But again, really sick art. Like you mentioned, this is really heavily inked, heavily lined art of Rudo here in the center, which is very cool.
Yeah.
And this is something I think that she got directly from Okubo. Okubo does this a lot in his art. So. And
I appreciate like his clenched fist shaking, that it does affect him. All of these words. I think this is an interesting moment because Rudo doesn't belong anywhere, right? He doesn't fit in with the upper crust of society. He lives in the slums, and even the kids in the slums don't like claim him as one of them.
He's an outcast of the people who are already outcasts, like bullied by the bullies. Yeah,
It explains his rough around the edges persona, because he has to be tough and bite back because like otherwise he won't live.
Yeah, exactly. And we do see him biting back a lot, which I think is something I really like about him. This is his friend Chiwa, Chiwa's kind of his childhood crush. Rudo stole this little bunny for her. It's maybe implied that maybe that's what he was looking for originally when he was digging through the trash. He could have been looking for other stuff, but this is the thing that we see him come back with. And he's very sort of like shy, like, I'm not going to sell it, I wanted to give it to you, and all that stuff, which is very cute. And then he kind of runs off, and he runs home to his caretaker, who we see here, who again I think has just like a great character design, only for one chapter. This is Regto, who is his... I don't know if he actually calls him his uncle or if it's just his caretaker or what, but this is the guy who's been taking care of him, I think, since his dad did crime.
He's just a dude.
Yeah, I think he's just a dude who took him in.
He's just a dude. He's his foster father, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. These scenes I really like where he is just being a kid.
Yeah. I like Regto's teasing him a bunch, like giving him shit for liking Chiwa. Like all that stuff I think is great character stuff.
Yeah, and you can see why the child in Rudo still exists and is not just full-on survival mode feral child. Because he has like one positive influence in his life that still keeps him having fun a little bit. Yeah,
for sure. This is where we learn a little bit more about the gloves that Rudo was given, why he wears them, because he basically says like his father wounded him before he was taken away or left. He has what look like sort of like bandage burns or something on his arms. I am curious if this is some kind of magical injury. It looks to me like a non-normal injury, but I think it's potential that it could just be normal. But something tells me that the way he's wounded might actually be important in the future. We don't really get much more information than that.
I think you're right.
See, it seems important the way it's kind of presented here. So
yeah, And it's like he has like the spirals in his eyes and his arms. I think it's probably has something to do with his power.
Yeah. So that's we'll put that down officially as a prediction here. We learned, this is where Regto gave him these gloves. He said his hands are basically always in pain. The gloves helped help the pain. It says intense pain naturally lost its edge with the gloves. And he's taken really good care of the gloves we see throughout these early chapters. And after that, we get a very cool spread. The spreads in chapter 1 here are awesome. We'll see the really famous one coming up really soon. But yeah, this is where we learn to talk about what's going to be important kind of in the second half of this chapter, which is the pit and what this sort of floating world does with all of their trash. And that includes people like murderers and people who do crime. They essentially throw it all into this abyss, into this place called the pit. They throw all their trash down there. And this is a really cool, a very cool spread, I would say. That again, those really heavy inks are very, very prominent here.
I also love how like the panels at the top are cut by the abyss. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a cool shot.
It's a really cool shot. And something else that I want to call out that I like a lot about this series is that all hand-drawn backgrounds. If you notice, the buildings and everything, all drawn by hand. None of this is converted pictures or anything like that, which you see a lot with anything that takes place in Tokyo, right? Like people aren't drawing all those backgrounds usually. But all of this is hand-drawn, all of these buildings, all of these slums and stuff. So very cool. I really, really like this panel. I really like the art. All of our garbage eventually gets tossed into the pit. This voiceover says, including people when they commit crimes, they all end up in the pit. We see a little scene right here of them throwing somebody into the pit. He says, even my dad was swallowed up in the pit, or so they tell me. And Rudo wonders, I wonder what happens to people who get dropped down there. That would be dramatic irony, foreshadowing for anyone who has read and completed chapter 1.
And it also, I think, gives you foreshadowing in that the dad will be a character later on.
I think so too. I think that absolutely Rudo's dad is going to be important, whether adversarial or friendly and helpful. I'm not sure, but yeah, I absolutely think that this is kind of a standard shonen thing, right? Of like, your dad is important. You're looking for who your dad is. This is like Hunter x Hunter does this, right? Like Gon's whole thing is he's looking for his dad. I agree. The dad's going to be important eventually. Not in this early one, but eventually. Chiwa shows back up. We get a cute scene where Rudo sort of like does a confession, and Chiwa also kind of is like, love you like I do. And this is a not important scene for the story, but an important scene for character building, which is good, in that I like Rudo's goofy kind of over the top reactions. He's a character that we learn is very kind of, he's over the top. He's animated. He tries to like, is it here where he tries to like smile and look at his reflection? I think it's earlier. Regto tells him to like practice your smile and go talk to Chiwa, and he like tries to practice smiling into like a pool of water, and it like looks, it's like an awful smile.
It looks very creepy. I wrote here in my notes like that Rudo's a cute little kid. He just had to grow up too fast because of circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I think this is great. He's a little kid. He has a hard time displaying his emotions because of his living conditions and circumstances, but also like it's cool to see the childhood part of him come out every once in a while. Yeah. I think the author does a good job of writing a kid who is going through these circumstances instead of, which I find a lot of manga just write characters this age as adults.
Adults who are 14 or whatever, yeah.
Essentially. Exactly.
He definitely still has a kind of childlike innocence to him that quickly gets taken away. But I want to call out this line that Rudo has here because I think it plays in thematically to all the stuff we were talking about. He's talking about this bunny that he's giving to Chiwa, and he says, maybe you don't want something that's already been thrown away, but I thought it would be happier if instead of getting tossed out, it could stay with you. So And I think that sort of that characterizes Rudo really well, because it shows that the rest of the world, like you mentioned, kind of has thrown out a group of people, has thrown out all this trash, and Rudo has found value in taking something that someone else has thrown out and investing it with his love, or giving it as a token to someone else, essentially caring for it when other people didn't. And I think that's very thematically consistent in this chapter 1. So I like that a lot.
And he's talking about himself.
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's essentially saying, hey, I got thrown out. If you will care for me, that would be better. Like you're right on that he's definitely pretty much directly saying, like, because he's personifying the stuffed animal and saying, I thought it would be happier if, instead of getting tossed out, it could stay with you. What he's really saying is, please accept this rabbit. I got tossed out. I'm going to be happier if I can stay with you. Like, that is literally kind of what he's saying here. So yeah, good call there. We then, on his way back, he kind of gets flustered, runs away. On his way back, he runs into a scary masked man. Again, another awesome design. There's only about 4 or 5 characters in this chapter 1, and they all have really good designs. This guy drops a book when he runs into him. Now,
a Necronomicon looking
thing. But also, I don't know if you noticed this. I don't think I grabbed a picture of it. Regto, the first time we see him, I think is reading a book exactly like this.
I did not notice that.
I don't think I have a picture of it. I'm gonna look through my soft cover.
Oh, so the book was stolen from Regto.
I think that's the implication, right? Because as we're about to see, Regto has been murdered. Like, Regto's been murked, assumedly by this guy. I don't think there's any debate there. And stole that book from him. So something in that book is important. I think Regto is, I guess, something that's great about the world building in this chapter and in the whole volume 1 is that there's other things going on in the background. Regto clearly knows something, has some kind of knowledge either about Rudo's father or this magic system that we learned about later. This book is important. Why were people trying to murder? Why did Regto get murdered here? Why was that book taken from him? Who is this guy with the mask? All these are really, like, interesting questions that chapter 1 poses. But anyways, Rudo comes in, finds Regto stabbed. Regto is essentially like, this world sucks. You have to change it. Go be a revolutionary kind of thing. Rudo gets zapped. They call him a murderer. He's like, I didn't do it. And they're like, you're covered in blood. It's obviously you did it. Something I like about the series a lot is that Rudo has a really, how do I say it? He's very emotive and emotional, and he is not a flat-faced, like, he's always at, like, 100%. If he is, like, yelling at someone, he's yelling at them big. If he is, mad at someone, he is incredibly pissed. Like, this kind of, like, not, there's no, like, medium emotions in Rudo. He's a very kind of severe in that way.
And I like that he is not always Eren Yeagering it up, where he's like, I have to fucking kill everyone all the time. It kind of like, he's like going through a flux of whatever emotion is at the forefront.
Exactly.
He expresses it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. You said it a little bit better. It's like whatever emotion he's feeling right in that moment at the forefront is the thing that he is kind of feeling at 100%. But yeah, so he gets kind of taken. He gets strung up. Chiwa kind of betrays him a little bit here. I don't know if this will come back or not, but
I like this because, I mean, I know we're supposed to hate Chiwa for this, but I think she is just a little kid that lives in this society.
Yeah.
Of course, it's fucked up. It's completely fucked up. And Rudo, I think this is the breaking point, right? Because Rudo had Regto and Chiwa as, like, the foundations of what kept him emotionally stable. And the moment Chiwa drops the rabbit, you see that Rudo looks back at the crowd and sees just a mass of, like, leering faces. And they're all poorly drawn because he doesn't...
Yeah, the art down here again.
People. Yeah.
Yeah, he just totally loses it. I mean, he does the sort of creepy smile. Yeah, you're totally right. He, in something that's very cool, as Rudo is about to be kind of thrown away from the society as a piece of trash, he, I think, kind of throws away his attachments to it a little bit, because he doesn't, you're right, he doesn't have anybody left. Chiwa would have been the last one. You know, if Chiwa would have said, you know, I believe you, come back to me, he would have had another reason to come back, but he doesn't have that, because she kind of betrays him. She throws him away when he had asked her, you know, earlier in the same day, you know, accept me as a thrown away person, you know, as a trash person.
Right.
So yeah, again, he yells at everybody here, which is great. He doesn't just take it laying down.
Yeah. They all look like warped, scary figures now to him, because they don't see him, they see him as trash, as nothing. Mm-hmm. And he sees them as a bunch of useless masses, as useless lumps, as he says.
Bunch of turds.
Yeah.
I appreciate Kodansha translating a lot of his language as turd. He uses, like, I think in the chapter 2, 3, 4, he uses like turd.
They all do.
Turd bucket.
I love that.
And stuff. I feel like this could have used a little bit more severe wordage, but I do get that, you know, the appeal things like, hey, calling these like you're all a bunch of shits, you know, or like you could be a little bit more wordy with it, but turd is
I also like his dad earlier said that this world is a steaming pile of crap. There's a lot of poo poo pee pee talk, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's where he learned all his poop language from, his pops, his girl pops.
For sure. Yeah, but we get him yelling. We see that he sees the guy he ran into in the middle of the crowd. And he knows somehow, potentially through magic or just from maybe he saw the book or something. But yeah, I love that a lot of vengeance stories are very kind of like, I don't know, like the characters are very calm in their vengeance. They're like, yes, I will seek vengeance for my father. This is my quest. And Rudo is absolutely like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm yelling, I hate you, I'm screaming, I'm gonna send you to hell, all of humanity, every one of you, the sharp teeth, cool stuff. I love it. It's like he
freaks out.
He freaks out, and it's a cool characterization because it's very severe, it's very over the top, it's very 110%. It just makes him more interesting.
I love that you see in the eyes. I think in every the eyes display everything in anime, right? So everyone does like the crazy vengeance eyes, but I love that they show you his fangs.
Yeah, his sharp teeth, I think, is a really good thing to kind of focus on. In these parts too. Yeah. And yeah, just the way that Urana draws his eyes in so many different ways, like they're smaller when he's kind of afraid and trying to do stuff here. When he goes crazy, they're kind of thicker and wavier here. Here they have the kind of lines and shrink into the center.
And this panel too, right? Like his teeth.
Yeah.
It's just she keeps his teeth normal but blurs them so they all look like a sharp set of sharp teeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It looks like he's got like vampire fangs or something here. And again, exactly. the inversion of colors, I think I think we mentioned this before, but this is a good page I think to talk about it, is that the art here is really strongly inked and uses kind of very dark blacks and a lot of blacks on the page to show a lot of stuff. And I think the transition here of sort of showing Rudo like under his hood, having more darker things, like having kind of a darker shading up there. And then on this page here, changing the text bubbles to black. He's fully outlined in black. And then going to sort of the full black page where he's in white, and then the full black page where he's in black and just white outlined. It very much shows a kind of descent from light to dark, from high to low. And then the next shot,
heaven to hell, I guess.
Yeah, and then the next shot is sort of I would say the famous spread you often see from GACHIAKUTA Chapter 1, which is Rudo being thrown off of his home and seeing something.
Some Cthulhu-esque
we don't
monster.
Know what it is, which is a very cool thing. But and Another thing that's interesting with sort of blacks and whites here, you know, that's I'm the I'm the black, gray, white guy, so this is what I like to talk about. The sky above Rudo as he's falling here is black, and the part below him is lighter.
Hey, good call.
Which clearly and clearly, I think thematically, as we'll see, he is thrown from a place that most characters, I would say, think is sort of paradise in the sky, down to a trash heap, which everyone says, well, this is the shitty place. But if this chapter 1 and sort of the themes that we've pulled out of it, I think if we apply those to what we learned, even just in volume 1 here, I think it's going to become pretty clear that the ground, the trash heap, that's going to be somehow for whatever reason, maybe just from sort of adopting Rudo or from Rudo learning to care about it and the people down there. The trash heap on the ground is going to be his home, is going to be his salvation, and the place in the sky that he came from is going to be the evil that is trying to be overcome. And I think that visually, it's literally displayed on this page also. I think it's shown here.
Yeah, and this limbo-esque area, I think this is like a fascinating bridging section too. I hope we come back to it. Mm-hmm. I think we will, because of this eldritch entity that we spot.
Yeah, and I mean, slight spoiler skipping ahead. I read 40 or 50 chapters. I don't know what this is yet, so I'm excited to keep reading and see what's going on here if we ever get back to this. Yeah, but I do think this is. I mean, of all the panels in chapter 1, this is such a stunning, such a good thing. So after that, Rudo sort of wakes up on the ground in a giant trash heap. He's, what is this place? I got dropped in the pit. We see, it says, I've been told it was a giant trash heap, garbage, humans, everything, every kind of filth eventually ends up here. And we see the sort of monsters. It truly is a pit. But yeah, we see a cool trash monster. I love how his, the feet of the trash monsters are made of like the oil barrel type things. You see on the guy's back, he's got signs and electricity poles and refrigerators and all this stuff. Very cool design. Yeah, I mean, that is the end of chapter 1. Yeah, I think this is one of the best chapter 1s of recent history. It's super strong. Yeah, and I gotta say, I do think my favorite thing about it, which we mentioned before at the beginning, is that Urana essentially builds out this whole world that we talked about and has interesting questions about. Who's the upper class, who's the lower class? What is this book? What are these people? Why do they have a flying island? They ask all these interesting questions. They build this interesting world, and then they throw our main character out of it and go, okay, I'll build a new world down here. I'll build a secondary world, which probably will eventually all tie together. But it's so bold and interesting to do that, right? To instead of using chapter 1 to sort of set up your story, here's our location, here's our character. Basically, the only thing you take from chapter 1 into the rest of the story is the character, is Rudo, right? Almost everything else is sort of rebuilt from scratch from here on, which I think is so cool.
I think it does a really good job of, one, establishing Rudo as a character, but two, also establishing the theme.
Yeah. And
it kind of Rudo's place within the caste hierarchy of this world. The fact that he's always an outsider, and that's how that frames his perception of reality. I think it's all of that was told in chapter 1, and yeah. I think it's just very good. Yeah.
Art is great. Rudo, we'll learn a little bit more about him, I think, but I like that he's a little bit of a shithead. He gives Regdo some trash. I think it's a good call out. I guess I misspoke a little bit. I do think that chapter 1 does a good job of setting up both Rudo, who we carry through the whole series, and I do think the themes that are set up, even though we do kind of throw away the flying world at the end of the chapter, I do think that thematically it feels like it's gonna keep those kind of consistent themes throughout the whole thing, so it doesn't. It isn't a totally wasted chapter 1 or anything like that. I just think it's really cool that they develop a location and build some characters, and then it's well, all that's gone now. You don't get any of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's bold, it's brave. I think it's cool.
So and I don't think they explained this in the 4 chapters, but this is what happens to, like, trash becomes sentient monsters. This is like the answer to the question that they mentioned at the very beginning. It's like, what happens if something is not well loved? Mm-hmm. It's just discarded as nothing.
Yeah, they talk about it a little bit in chapter 4, but it isn't. They talk about anima and stuff, which we'll get to, but yeah, not okay, it isn't like totally explained, but it's implied, I would think, a little bit. But yeah, I mean, anything else about chapter 1 here? We can kind of go through chapter 2, 3, 4, the rest of the volume. Cool, yeah.
And I think those will be faster because chapter 1 had all the theme talk.
Yeah. And chapter 2 is pretty, like, I don't have very many notes on chapter 2 because it's mostly action.
And it was badass. Yeah.
Yeah. Chapter 2 is like is Rudo. Rudo runs away from these big trash monsters. He learns and realizes that the air is toxic down here, just as from all the trash. He tries to fight back, which I think is sort of an important thing of his character. He doesn't just lay down and take it. He takes it into his own hands. He picks up, he tries to fight back against the thing. He thinks he destroys one, and then it rebuilds itself. And then
he fights this monster after falling like 1,000,000 feet out of the sky. That's so fucking sick.
Yeah, I do wonder. It's hard to say because this world is very. Like bouncy, I guess I would say. Like, I don't know how realistic physics are in this world, how much we need to care. It's like, did he fall thousands of feet and hit the garbage and he's okay because the garbage is soft and the story needs it? Or was something else going on? Like, maybe the monster kind of on the horizon there that we saw, maybe they did something. Maybe his special powers saved him. Maybe somebody else did. Like, it's kind of, we don't really know, so.
I think, like, logically we can say it's probably the trash that padded the fall. But I
Most
think...
likely, yeah.
My theory at the moment is that he is loved by the discarded of the world. So he was supernaturally padded from the fall.
Yeah, I do wonder. I have a suspicion that there might be some supernatural stuff going on in here, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And then he tries to fight back. He gets saved, and we meet kind of the most important new character from chapter 2. This is a character named Engine, who has, again,
he's so
the sickest
looking, dude.
Yeah, the sickest design. This is our like a mentor character. I think it's pretty safe to say early on in these early chapters. Yeah, I mean the visual design stuff in chapter 1 I thought was great. I loved Regto. I love Rudo. The guy who kills Regdo, we don't really see him, but his mask is cool. Engine is like, you get here and you're like, oh, okay. Like, every single person in this is going to be super well designed. And from what I've read, like, it's absolutely true. He has, we learn a little bit more about what his weapon is later, but he has this, like, essentially a blade umbrella that he sort of imbues and uses. He has his cool, unique mask. He uses a move called Umbreaker Octashredder.
That's so cool.
Which is just wild and random. This is reminding me a little bit of the current Dan to Dan series. It also has like an umbrella fighter. A lot of vibes from that here. But yeah, he truly defeats one of these big monsters. Engine does. And there's chapter 2 is kind of action packed, not a whole lot done in here. But yeah, I mean this is. Again, another cool design character. Here he is with his mask off, large piercings, interesting eyes. Again, kind of undercut, cool haircut. Yeah, tattoos. We'll see a lot more about the tattoos later on.
And so far, his disposition is that of a lovable asshole.
Yes, he's very much sort of like a jerk. He's just like a jerk to Rudo in these next, especially in chapter 3. I also like that he gets this kind of like stunning reveal of like, oh no, he's hot when he like takes his mask off, and then the next panel is like, oh my god, it smells bad. I'm putting my mask back on. Why'd you make me take it off? Why'd you distract me?
Yeah, but when it's clearly like his fault, he did it just to look cool.
Yeah, exactly. He did it because he's like, oh, this is the cool reveal of like my real face.
Yeah,
and then he's like,
I love it. Yeah. It's like a little bit of a meta joke.
Mm-hmm, for sure. For sure. But yeah, that's Engine. There's a little bit of a flashback here. Which we learn, which is kind of setting up, I guess I would say, the kind of magic system, where Rudo is talking to Regto about how, like, you told me if you take care of something for a long time, it gets imbued with a soul. He says, I believed you. And Recto's kind of like, imbued with a soul. He's like, oh, and you think that means that they're alive. Kind of saying like, well, maybe that's not what's going on. Like, they are imbued with a soul, but alive or not, who knows? He's like, maybe it's just a legend. Recto says like, but I believe it. And this, yeah. Anyway, just a little bit of like kind of a flashback to set up what we're going to learn, I think, in chapter 3 and 4, which is that, this magic system is essentially based around like you care about something and you have an item that you like a lot. It becomes powerful and it is imbued with power from that. So that's about it for chapter 2. Chapter 2 is kind of a pretty short one. So in chapter 3 here, we open up with Rudo being trailed behind Engine in a chain. Again, turd face. That's the one that's like, Rudo calls people turd faces like 40 times in these chapters. He gets, Engine essentially sells off Rudo to a bunch of other people. We learn about the sphere and spherites, which is what Rudo is, and the place above that dumps trash on them, they call the sphere. So that's kind of a neat little thing of world building. Rudo says, I wrote this down, I'm not going to shut up until you give me answers, which I think is good because Rudo has a clear sort of goal and quest to these chapters, is that he knows the guy that killed his adoptive dad. His goal is to get back to the sky, to the sphere, and kill that guy. And he needs to know how to do that. And so that's like, he's talking to Engine. He's like, Engine, like, you're going to tell me how to get back up there. Like, you're going to tell me how to get back there. Yeah, I just need information. Tell me information. I need to know this. I like that it gives Rudo a goal to chase through this. I like that he isn't, aimlessly like, I don't know what I'm doing here. What is this? It's good that he just like has a driving force behind him. I think that is, I think that just makes it more interesting.
I agree, and I think this also shows a little bit of Engine's personality to us, in that he is, it seems like he's a nice dude, but he is just a prick. I guess like a douchebag with a heart of gold.
Yeah, lovable asshole, definitely.
Yeah.
The sort of like,
because
I'm selfish, but I'm not going to like totally abandon a kid who fell down, right? Like,
exactly.
He's like, but I will sell him to traders and see what happens. Like, he's...
And I have a question on his motivations, because I only know him 4 chapters in, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if Rudo didn't develop his powers, if he would have just let the sale go through.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this is... It seems implied, even just in these 4 chapters, that Engine either felt... Because Engine watches him in chapter 2, right, try to fight back against the beast, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think he sees like a little bit of... It's not called awakening, I don't know, like giving or whatever you want to call it. A little bit of magic stuff happen. And I think he says like, oh, I think maybe this kid has the power. And then he's like, okay, well...
He's more of an opportunist.
Exactly. He's like, well, I'll sell him to these traders and, he'll either fight back and he'll be mad. If he fights back and he's magic, I'll come save him and I'll take him with me. And if not, then oh well. Like, I just made a bunch of money or whatever. So
yeah, exactly. I think that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess he doesn't even have a heart of gold. He's just an asshole.
I think he kind of does, because I mean, I don't know.
I think he'll develop one later.
Yeah, I mean,
after they get to know
a true
each other
asshole would have
better.
been like, your clothes are worth a lot of money. I'm gonna kill you and take your clothes, right? Like, there's kind of like a middle ground of like, he's selfish but not.
No, because he's opportunistic. He only helps Rudo when he sees value in him. But I mean, this is the society, right? This is the society
I think so. Yeah. I think compared to everyone else, I mean, compared to the other people that we see in chapter 3 that he gets sold to, Engine seems like a nice guy. Like, the other people are like, we hate you. We're going to take you and sell you and kill you. We hate you so much. And Engine's like, I might help you out a little bit. Like, I'll give you a chance to be, to make it out.
I don't know. It's like, to me, it's like selling a light bulb instead of plugging it in and using it, right? I don't know. It's like, He sees the long-term benefits, whereas these people see the short-term benefits.
Yeah.
I don't think they see him as like a person and care for him in that way yet. Yeah.
I do think there's a little bit of like... There's a little bit of Engine, I think, like testing Rudo here, of being like... The pit is like a rough place to live. And if I sell this kid off to these bad guys, and if he doesn't fight back, if he doesn't have the will to like... struggle and fight, he's not going to make it anyways. So it's sort of like a test in like, if I give him these guys and he fights back, then he's got the sort of gumption to make it down here. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't, and that he just won't make it. That's the fact.
So you're thinking this is more of a harsh reality test instead of like he sees Rudo as an investment.
I think so. I think he sees him as like, this kid potentially has magic powers that'll help me with my job. And he also says like, this kid's not from here. Let's see if he can make it. Let's see if he has the right mindset, to make it here. And so I'll put him kind of at the bottom of, like I'll sell him to these people who hate him, who are just going to kill him. And if I even think that he might be, like Engine might be nice enough to be like, oh, he's trying to fight back. Let me go save him. Like, yeah, he does have the gumption to make it. But yeah.
Got it. Maybe that makes itself more clear later on. I can definitely see that perspective,
though.
I
we'll definitely see more of him. So yeah.
Yeah.
But these guys feed Rudo a bunch of slop, and Rudo's kind of like, yeah, I'll eat this, whatever. You think it's thrown away, but I think it's delicious, because that's kind of who he is. If you've thrown something away, it's something that I love. Is Rudo's theme.
Right. He's like stubbornly. Yeah, adhering to his morals.
He's kind of the ultimate. Like why am I forgetting what? Who are the people who wear flannel, and
like a hipster?
A hipster. He's like the ultimate hipster in that, like, oh, you don't like this thing? That's my favorite thing now. Like nobody else liked this. Like I liked it before you did, and if everyone doesn't like it, I like it. Like that's kind of.
And it makes perfect sense, because everyone treats him like nothing, like a freak, an outcast. So he's like, well, if you don't appreciate these things, I appreciate them.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you threw something out, that's now my thing. That's
he defiantly acts the opposite. Yeah,
for sure. But we get a pretty brutal scene here where Rudo bites this guy's fingers off.
I love his face, like that dude's so face.
Yeah. And then you just like see the bone fingers and stuff. It's like, I don't know, this is like, I think in chapter 2 you're expecting a little bit more like, oh yeah, it's going to be people versus trash, and then here it's just like, and then the main character bites a man's fingers off, like for real, right. And it's gross and intense.
I think one important thing to note prior to this is that when Engine sells him to these people, the people are like, oh, you're from the sky, you dropped down, and he's like, oh wow, and they were acting all nice at first. And then Rudo kind of believes that they're going to be nice to him, but they just chain him up and say they're going to sell him. Which means that even down here, he doesn't fit in. Even down here, he's seen as someone from up there, So, he has no place that he belongs.
Yeah, immediately sort of tied up, thrown to the side again, right? Like, you're here, you're not valuable.
Exactly. It's like, and he says it right here, every stinking one of you always putting a label on things. Enough of your self-serving categories. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. But this is where we sort of get his magic start awakening. His gloves get the kind of black magic around him. He's like, I sit here keeping my mouth shut, and you think that means you can walk all over me? Again, I like Rudo because he's like, you're mean to him, and he's like, fuck you, you were mean to me. I'm pissed off at you now. Like, I'm going to be mad. And he's like, he's like, I'm not going to take it anymore. And he's got it's such a cool page panel here. He has this sort of dark magic around his chains. And Engine is like watching him from up on a cliff, and he's like, look at all that energy. He's like, I knew I was right about this kid.
With his shit-eating grin. I like that.
Shit-eating grin. Yeah, I really like Engine so far in these chapters. And then we get, again, this is the stuff that reminds me a lot of Okubo and Fire Force and Soul Eater especially, is like, the kind of like, I don't know how to, like the kind of opening scene of a fight scene where it's like you get the kind of flourish of like, here's my weapon or power in like a cool shot angle, like I've burst through the door and here I am, right? Which we get here with Rudo. We see that the chain sort of takes on the magic in this top panel here and like changes from a normal chain to like a dark chain with spikes on it. And then at the bottom, it's like spikes, and they've also kind of like formed a new like gauntlet thing around his arm. Again, visual design here, very, very cool, sick as always. I really like this. And then Rudo essentially kicks their ass, or starts to. They say that power, it can't be. No way, they have them in the sphere too. People with the ability to give life to an object and draw out its full power. He's a giver. So here's a. Slight lore dump. Giver is going to be our sort of magic user person. I think this is a consistent throughout the whole series. Yeah, I mean, cool. There it is. And then something else that we find out later is a little interesting, is that Rudo just like picks up a spare tire that's on the ground and like transforms it into like, I don't know if you've ever played Overwatch, but he just transforms it into like, is it?
Oh yeah, it's
junk rattle.
Junkrat.
It's just junk rattled, right? It's like the tire thing, which is cool that in there, and like the guys he's fighting against and Engine are both like, he can use more than one thing. So he's clearly, obviously our main character is special, but clearly he has a power that's a little bit more special than others who use this. So
right.
I think that's really cool. I also really like that the two contrasting facial expressions here of like the guy who's about to get hit with the tire, and then Engine is like excited that he found a kid who's really special and maybe like really useful to him.
Yeah.
I think those are really great here.
I have some things to say about the gloves, or just some theories. So okay, he clearly can use more than one thing, as they say here.
Yeah.
I don't at the moment. I'm curious if it's the gloves themselves that give him this ability, his cursed-looking arms, or if that since he values the discarded and trash so much that it's just everything he touches, because he is imbuing us. He values the things others do not, and therefore imbues a soul on whatever he utilizes.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and I think that last one. I don't remember the answer to this from reading. I'm not even sure if
and don't tell me even if you do remember.
Yeah, but that last one seems more likely, I would say. I think the thematic, the puzzle pieces fit together more that Rudo, you're right, just cares about things that have been cast away more, and so he's able to imbue them with his spirit or whatever. That makes sense to me. It might just be his gloves. I think hopefully we'll see.
I hope it's the latter, because I
think so too.
I like that plot point. But I could see it just being the gloves.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Because it is very interesting that it's like, this kind of implies that usually these people only have one thing. Like for Engine, it's his umbrella, right? That clearly is like his thing that he cares about, that he's imbued with his spirit, that has the cool, can transform into blades and all that. So, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see.
It makes sense. It seems for everyone else, it's like meaningful objects to them. Mm-hmm. But for Rudo, it seems like it could be the plot point where everything, like all trash, is meaningful. He values it all.
I do think that I do think the gloves are going to be very important to him, and potentially like his strongest power, because they focus on them here, and they do tell it's like, oh yeah, like these, I've had these gloves forever, I've taken care of them for a long time. So I do think either way the gloves end up being really important.
For sure.
But yeah, Engine here kind of gives him a little like, cool, you're strong. He's like, I'll give you answers. I'll tell you about those powers. In exchange, you're joining the Cleaners. You're just the kind of talent the Cleaners needs. And then I like Rudo. He's just like, no. He's like, I'm not doing that. But yeah, we learned like a little bit about the Cleaners. That's it basically for chapter 3. Chapter 4, Engine takes him to a doctor. This is where we actually get, there is, I did not mention them at the start, but there is essentially another author artist listed on the cover here. And that is this person who is listed as graffiti design, Hideyoshi Ando.
I love that.
And from what I remember reading the 50 or so chapters I did, this is not a one-off thing. This graffiti stuff is like a really consistent, really common visual motif. But this is the first time we see it here, is in this doctor's place, where we get these cool, kind of graffiti drawn on the walls and stuff.
And I think that's interesting, because I think, graffiti is inherently like self-expression, right? Mm-hmm. Something that you like the crooked nail gets hammered down, or whatever that saying is how it's applied in heaven, where you have to align with society. Whereas down here on the surface, self-expression seems to be way more widespread. Yeah.
I also think graffiti is, I think it thematically applies really well, because people generally don't go and graffiti tag like, a brand new building in the middle of town, right? They're doing like old beaten up, like discarded buildings or, old train cars and stuff like that, overpasses that people, that aren't really kept up. They're essentially taking garbage pieces of environment and putting their art on it and putting some like care and love into it, essentially. So I think
it's like areas people don't care about are used for artistic expression and made better for it.
Yeah, and now someone cares about that thing because their art is there now. So
exactly.
So I do think the graffiti here, I think, is a very cool thing, and like I said, I do believe we see a lot more of it. This doctor's pretty funny. I like that. Is like, whoa, you're freaking me out, old man, and then the old man, quote unquote, just yells about like, I'm an old lady. It's like, I don't have hair, but I'm an old lady.
I love her because she is just like erratic and freaking out.
Yeah.
Like she's like clearly the Yakuza doctor kind of archetype. I like how her eyes are always like completely wide.
Yeah. Wide open. I like the visual design of all these characters is great. There's a lot. I mean, like, you don't see that many manga or anime characters with piercings, and like everyone we've met here has had interesting piercings. Like Engine has 2 like pretty big rings. This the old doctor has a nose ring. And that keeps up from what I remember, is that these characters essentially have like interesting piercings, interesting tattoos, which is just like things that are not super common in Japan. But the visual design here is excellent for using them. It's like, it's great. So
I think this author is like well studied.
Yes.
In different cultures.
I mean, she can. Let me see. I can pull up a picture of her, and you'll be like, oh yeah. She looks like she probably has interesting piercings and a tattoo. Yeah. So Kei Urana looks like this. There's not a whole lot of pictures of her at, but you look at her
totally, yeah.
and she's like, that's like, like she's got like more piercings than normal. She probably has tattoos. Like, cool.
Yeah.
So I definitely think she's familiar with that culture.
It seems like it, and it shows. Wait, real quick, go back one. I like Rudo saying thank you here in the bottom left. He struggles to express thank you.
Yeah.
And that's because no one does anything for him ever. No one goes out of their way for him. And so this is like a new thing he has, like, he's feeling gratitude for one of the very few times in his life. And what a good boy. He's like expressing it. I think it just shows that he's like a genuinely good kid that is just mistreated by everything and everyone.
Yeah. I definitely think he's not a standard shonen protagonist, obviously, but I do think it's like, you're right. He is like a good kid on the inside. He is a good person on the inside. He's not his caring for discarded trash comes from a good place.
His teeth, like his like when he bites at people, when he's feral, when he's pissed off, that's all just a defense mechanism to survive, right? Ultimately, he would be just like a nice little boy if he was treated well, and that's like the whole point of this series. Yeah, but
for sure. Yeah, I agree. This is kind of our like lore dump chapter. Essentially, we get Engine tells us that garbage and negative emotions are plentiful down here, and that negative emotions manifests as something called anima, which is what creates the big monsters we see. And all that stuff. And anima's also, I think, kind of implied to potentially just be the magic that maybe also imbues the weapons and stuff, which we are Ruda's gloves are special, anima invested. Those tools are called vital instruments, which I think is a cool name. I don't remember if I grabbed a page for that or not, but so Engine kind of gives him a little bit of a lore dump, and he's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. The cleaners are the people who go and fight the beasts and any anima that kind of manifests as bad stuff, whether it's trash or whatever.
Real quick, I had one note here. Is the panel's not in here, but he basically compliments his gloves. He said his father gave it to him, right?
Yeah, he asked him about the gloves,
from his father. Yeah, and just one quick thing from chapter 1 to here I wanted to point out is when he was talking to Remno, he was talking about his scars and the pain, and he's like, "Yeah, it's the last thing my father left me." When he was talking to, is it Remno or
Regto?
Regto.
Yeah.
when he was talking to Regto, he's like, that's the last thing my father left me, is like these painful scars. And when he talks, and he says the gloves make the pain go away. And now when he's talking to Engine, he's like, yeah, this is the last memento for, these gloves are the last memento for my father. And I think that's a cool little symbol that the gloves may not actually be making the pain go away, but in his brain, it takes away the emotional pain, right? Like the gift from his shitty asshole dad was replaced by a gift from his loving dad.
Yeah.
And that made that pain go away.
Yeah, his first father gave him pain, and his second father took it away, which is in both direct with the gloves, but also indirect with like caring about him, raising him. So
yeah. So I think that says like a lot about both Rudo and the gloves in general, in just like a few short panels.
Yeah. I like Engine here being a smoker. I think that smoking's more common in Japan, but it just makes him look like more of a shithead, which is interesting.
I think it, like, the unfortunate reality of cigarettes is that it just looks badass.
It does look cool. Like, it's, definitely the sort of 50s, 60s movie guys with cigarettes are, and especially in still panels.
And for us millennials, Spike Spiegel is just super
he's a badass,
cool.
and he's a smoker.
Yeah.
But Engine tells him, like, hey, what is this? Oh, yeah, he's like, listen, all I need information. You have to tell me. He says, if I join, you'll promise you have to tell me how to get back upstairs, which I think is a funny turn of phrase there. He's like, oh, yeah, this is where Engine is sort of like the lovable shithead. He's like, actually, I don't have the slightest idea to get back up there. And he's like, you made me think. He's like, yeah, my boss might know. So he's like, if you join the cleaners, my boss will tell you about it. And again, like you mentioned, Rudo thanking Engine for all this. He kind of does it again here. He's like, it's like, I should have said this earlier, but thanks for all you did for me. If you can tell me how to get up top, then I can help the cleaners for a little while. So he's very sort of like, I appreciate it. I get it. I'm a good person. Thank you for that.
What a good kid. And he has like the little blushy, like tiny blush marks, which shows he's doing it like sheepishly.
It's honest.
He's not used to thinking.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then I love, again, Engine is like this lovable shithead because he immediately turns around. He's like, here you go. Here's some money, kid. And he's like, money? Are you sure? He's like, it's fine. He's like, oh, besides, like, I got it by selling all your clothes. And Rudo's like, flips out again. He's like, I'm going to kick your ass. It's like, you can't wear frat clothes down here anyways. Engine is great.
Rest in peace, Rudo's awesome outfit from before.
Yes. No spoilers, but Rudo will get a cool outfit again. So I can definitely look forward to that. I mean, you've seen it, I think, in the art, but yeah. So after that, a cat steals his money. He chases after it. He ends up grabbing the staff kind of out of a side pathway. And then it turns out that the staff belongs to this guy. Again, we did a new character. Look at that. Amazing design. Very cool, unique design. I get different cool earrings. He has the kind of, I don't know what you call this, like feather earrings. Like big pants, kind of the other stuff. This guy comes, takes his staff back, and is like, you stole from my staff. And it's like another cleaner because he's got the badge. And his staff is his vital instrument. And he says, let me give you a taste of my lovely assist staff. So it's got a name to it or something. And that is the end of chapter 4. So we get a little bit of lore dump in chapter 4 and then set up for what's coming next, which is we're going to fight this guy.
You know what's fucking badass, bro?
Yeah.
I love that all of these weapons are all non-combat, unconventional items.
Yeah.
Because they're just meaningful objects to people that turn into combat items. And I love that premise.
Yeah. From what I remember, and I don't remember a whole lot, that stays pretty consistent. It isn't like, I love this gun and the gun is powerful, or I love this knife. It's very much people liking like umbrellas and sticks and gloves. Like that, if I remember right, stays pretty consistent for the side of the power system.
And I think this sets the story up to have like seriously strong emotional beats where a character's like maybe living situation or life condition or whatever can be understood through whatever object they're using. So like on a visual level, you can kind of parse, you can glean a little bit from the character, you know?
Yeah.
Not to mention it's just unconventional and badass. It's like you don't see like a katana or like a fucking Glock.
Yeah.
You see like an umbrella.
Well, and I think it also sets up the idea that if someone maybe did love something that was already a weapon, does that make it stronger? I mean, surely, like, can you get through a manga without a guy with a katana showing up at some point? I don't know. And someone loving their katana seems very like that would make sense in culture. So I do wonder if we get someone like, oh, this guy is in love with something that's already a weapon. So maybe it's stronger.
Because these items, right? Like Rudo's is a memento from his dad and something that's been with him, take away the pain, all that stuff. An umbrella, likely something similar in Engin's life. Someone maybe gifted it to him or it helped him in a hard time or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone's like, wow, my precious katana, like through thick and thin.
Who knows?
My mom and I used it to. Yeah, it's like I think we see more daily life items that mean things. Like it's like more family or friends gave me this, or it was there during a special moment in my life, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think it makes it more interesting than if it was like, this is my special sword and this is my special sword. Like, yeah.
It's like, I love my Glock. I sleep with it under my bed, and it's my best friend. It's like, that's less cool than, like, the umbrella that, like, someone might have given you or you shared a special moment under, you know?
For sure. Yeah. So that's it for the first 4 chapters. That's volume 1. Any favorite parts? Any favorite panels? Anything that really stood out that we didn't, that we missed or didn't talk about? Anything else here?
Yeah, we talked about it, but I think my favorite section, I like the first chapter a lot. It did a lot in a small amount of time, and I think my favorite panels were during Rudo's execution. My favorite combat sequences was during chapter 2 when Engine was fighting with his umbrella. I thought that was badass because the umbrella worked as like a drill, and it like form change to like when he expanded it, it had like an AoE impact effect. Shit don't make no sense, but don't think about it. It's very cool.
Yep.
That was my favorite moments. How about you?
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, I just really think this is like an exceptionally strong and unique start to a story. That really like I am really interested in like what was the book that got stolen from chapter 1? Who were the bad guys? What the power system is interesting. I feel like, because we've really only met the characters we've really met and gotten to know is we've met Rudo, we met Engine, the side characters have all been goofy and fun, and then we met whoever this guy is, and they've all been excellently designed. And so I'm really excited to keep reading to just like meet more characters, because I feel like everyone we meet, and what I remember of what I've read, everyone you meet has a cool, sick-ass design, is a really interesting person. Because, taking her inspiration from Okubo, I think Okubo's strongest thing is his visuals and his characters. And I think that it is the exact same for GACHIAKUTA here. I think the visuals and the characters are absolutely the strongest part of this.
Yeah, and, I kind of appreciate, like, I don't think I took away nearly as much the first time I read through. I think the fact that we were going to talk about it made me look a little closer to parts I normally wouldn't have. So I noticed how much depth there is in this story, more so than previously.
Yeah, I definitely remember the first time I read this, I was like, oh, that was a fun, different chapter 1 and with some really good art. And now you look at it, you're like, yeah, no, there's like themes laid down here that are consistent, with Rudo and his character and the sort of the things that were shown. So yeah, I'm super curious to see if that consistency keeps up where it goes. Super interesting world designing, characters, all that stuff. So yeah,
it was a perfect balancing act, I felt, right? Like you're
think
right
so,
on the
yeah.
money. It's like great character writing woven in with establishing themes and a world at the same time. None of it felt janky or
some decent comedy in there too.
Exactly.
Rudo's funny when he's flirting with the girl or whatever, and Engine's being a shithead.
That was so cute.
Yeah, a really, really strong start. I'm really happy that we're doing this. Exciting.
I think the one thing I'm hoping for in this series is that it doesn't lean too shonen fighty with it. Like I loved the fights that we got, but I love the balance of character nuance that we're getting, and like establishing the theme, establishing the world. Like I love how balanced everything is. It's like it was split 30% for all of these, right? I hope it continues to maintain a balance like that instead of going full fight focus.
Yeah.
Like some shonen do.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I do think that this is a battle shonen, so I think that I think a lot of the climactic moments and development will be resolved kind of around or during fights, but yeah,
I love that. I love the fight too, right? I just liked how much time was given to the non-fights, and I hope we see more of that as well.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that because I mean in the first four chapters there's like a little bit of a fight. Chapter 2 is like the most fight heavy, and then there's like a little bit of a fight in chapter 3, but it's like mostly not fights, which I think is good. Yeah,
I agree.
I do think we see a lot of. You're right. We do see a lot of battle shonen where it's like there's a fight in chapter 1, and then chapter 2 they do another fight, and then chapter 3 it's like there has to be a fight every chapter now. Which this is taking its time. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. It's a very strong start so far.
GACHIAKUTA Volume 1. Anything else, Gautam?
Yeah. I guess to our audience, how do you like our structure? Would you like us to do it a different way? This way made sense to us. It's how we did our Nausicaa thing. Yeah. Give us feedback in the comments.
Yeah, and tell us, hey, how did you enjoy it? What do you like? What do you think? If you're reading along with us, maybe you're catching up on the anime. You found this one to get a deep discussion of Chapter 1 and Volume 1, which is good. And man, we did Nausicaa last year. If you're interested in Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, that is quite possibly the greatest manga I've ever read. Definitely one of them. We did hours and hours of discussion on that because there's a lot to talk about there.
To be honest, I really do think you should read along and then listen to the discussion, because it's like dense, like moment to moment discussion of like themes and characters.
Yeah,
and
so much
plot.
to unpack.
Yeah,
and I think it definitely will still be fun to unpack this one. We discovered. You're definitely right that the first time I read this, I was like, oh yeah, it's a fun. It has great design. It's a good, fun little action battle shonen. But when we do these sort of deep dives and really uncover these kind of character and thematic moments, it really, really does help me appreciate more how skilled some of these authors are. And in this case, Urana is incredibly skilled. Hayao Miyazaki, also incredibly skilled in Nausicaa, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know. Join in the discussion. I'm happy to hear any of your comments, things you liked or didn't like on the YouTube comments, or leave us an Apple review. I think that helps us out. Yeah. So, Gautam, anything else you want to say before we peace on out of here?
Nah. Let's meet him for the next volume.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks again, everyone, for listening or watching. Don't forget to come back. We'll be doing Volume 2 and 3 of GACHIAKUTA next week. We're doing, I think, 2 volumes a week, unless we decide that that's not enough. We might jump up to 3 volumes. We'll see. But that'll be coming next week after you listen to this one. Leave a comment. Give us feedback. Upvote. Thumbs up. Check out Twitter and Patreon. Yeah, and thanks for being with us for the start of this cool journey reading Kei Urana's GACHIAKUTA.
Later, turds.
Hey, don't forget to read more manga.
I think this is a good one because it's like I didn't expect it to be as nuanced. That's like one thing that surprised me. I think it's like a middle ground between Nausicaa and doing like something like Bleach.
Yeah, where it's like there's no substance at all under it. It's interesting because there's like going into it, I was like, oh yeah, this will be fun. There's not a whole lot there, but it'll be like, yeah, the art's great, it's fun, the characters are great. And then reading it, it's like, oh no, there's some thematic stuff that's really consistent that ties in with Ruto's character. That you just don't like. I just wouldn't get if I just sat down and reread it myself. I just wouldn't really get all that stuff out of it without like sitting down and being like, let's talk about chapter 1 for 30 minutes and everything that's in it.
Yeah, you view things with a mindset that you're going to have to speak on it, and the fact is, I think our audience, like the niche we've carved out, they like analysis of these kinds of things. So I think it's like with that in mind, you just try to find themes and try to find interesting moments, and it's like normally I think our media literacy lets us do that to an extent anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think you like we both tune in or focus up a little bit more when it comes to these kinds of pods.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like, I think it's I don't even know how to. If you go looking for it and find it, it's good that it's there. I think there's a lot of things where we could try to do a deep dive and say, oh, let's try to find, some deepness in like a not like Bleach or something, right? Like that, there's not that much deep.
Or like 90% of the chapter 1s we read. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, there's nothing. Yeah. I mean, like we essentially do this for every chapter 1. We look at like, is there some thematic stuff? Is there anything in here? And there's just not usually. Like we go looking for it and we just usually turn up empty-handed. And so I think
that's why we don't like a lot of things that people like, or we think it's like, oh, that was okay, and it has like a hugely positive reception.
I think so, because I think we go looking for like, is there something underneath this? Like, is this author thinking about theme and character and it's like all these establishing things? We go looking for that in our chapter 1s, and we usually don't find it. And we do find it sometimes, right? Like sometimes stuff's just cool, but like in like Galaxia's had it, right? The sense of adventure we talked about. Like we went looking for it and we found a theme. It's there in chapter 1, which is like that.
Does it have layers?
Yeah, exactly.
Is usually what
does
we
it have
look for.
A subtext? Does it have a layer below the sort of what's happening on? So I'm really happy that like I liked it even more. Like I read whatever I said 40 chapters of GACHIAKUTA when it came out, and I remember it being like, yeah, this is okay, this is fine, it's fun. I think it's just going to be even better reading it week to week, or reading two volumes a week and being like, are the themes still there? Is everything still consistent? The characters I think are all going to be great.